And we're live. Hello, everybody. My name's Ray. This is Dan. Say hi, Dan.
Hi, Dan.
And we are the Bearded Men of Real Estate, hosting a show called This Week in Real Estate. So thanks, everybody, for joining us. We have a ton of news to talk about today. We're going to be going through the inflation numbers that just came out this morning. We're talking about the housing data. Some people are saying that our downturn, I don't know if you guys knew it, but we were in a housing downturn. Some saying that our downturn is now coming to an end. Banks are losing money on loans for the first time ever, so we'll be talking about that. I guess that is kind of a big story. We were talking in the pre-show with Linda Baker. I've left that one out. Banks are losing money on loans. Every loan they did in 2022. So we're going to discuss that today. Compass is expanding some more. But Dan, what's going on with you, man? Welcome.
Dude, I have so much going on. I can't. Yeah, I just can't talk about it all. Like I've been trying. I don't know if you guys. Do you have the thumbnail, Ray? Do you have the thumbnail?
Yeah. Oh, let me load it into this.
Bring up the thumbnail. Ray has been on my case, and that's not a bad thing. I say it like it's a bad thing. But for the last 3 weeks, we constantly try to change this, how we present the show and how we do our thumbnails and how we write the show. We've been.
We're testing everything all the time. Yeah.
So, dude, that looks amazing. That should get 1,000 views day one.
Just from the thumbnail.
Amazing. We're constantly trying to make it better for you guys. And Ray has been all over me like, dude, just dedicate some pictures. Time. I haven't had much time to do it, but this morning I put time into it, and boom, look at that thumbnail today.
It's beautiful. And I have to say, the reason why we do that, we were doing thumbnails that were like movies and stuff like that, and scenes from movies.
Amazing.
They were really cool. I'll put up one of those that we recently did here. If I can, here's one from Independence Day. It was hilarious. But those weren't getting really the traction because no one, I guess, knew what we were talking about. So we've gone back to the podcaster standard where we're both at microphones, and then we have the little words housing bottom, which that is the main topic of the show today. And if you're a real estate professional or real estate agent listening in, I'd love to have you chime in. If you're on Clubhouse, you can raise your hand and come up and speak with us. If you are in YouTube land or Facebook, you can comment, and then we can display your comment and talk about you or your comment, just like Melissa Mara says, hey guys. Hey, Melissa, thanks for joining us. Howard's here too. And we can display that comment and talk about it. But we want to know do you feel that housing has bottomed out where you are? Did you know that housing was bottoming out where you were? And if you know it was a thing, if you did notice that was a thing, was it seasonal? Was it actually happening? So drop that in the comments as we go through the stories today. Melissa Mars laughing at my YouTube land. Well, it kind of is it's a totally different space. The community on YouTube is completely different from the community on Facebook, which is completely different from the community on Clubhouse. So, and then no matter where you're joining from,
remember day one, we're a podcast. We are a podcast. So, and that's doing well. But that's just pull the audio and put it out there, and then, get you guys to go listen to it, but also review it, please, when you're listening to it on any streaming service. So that's doing pretty well. But when we put our faces on stuff, people don't like it.
Jack says, ChatGPT, make me 1 million doom and gloom headlines for the thumbnail. Yeah, I think that's pretty much what every YouTuber is doing right now.
Yeah.
And bottom out. So you mean no product, no sales, almost no buyers? Yeah, I noticed. So that was from Howard, who's in a very unique market of Israel.
He's one of our favorite viewers that makes us worldwide.
Might be slightly detached from what's happening in the U.S. But anyway, chime in. And as we go throughout the show, we'll display some of those comments and information. So, but I appreciate all you being here. And with that, let's talk about this. National home prices bottoming out. Is it happening in your area? So this first article comes to us from, where was this one? It was on Yahoo Finance. I know Dan always laughs at how I say Yahoo. It was on Yahoo Finance. I guess that's how the cool kids say it. CoreLogic announces national home prices have bottomed out. So CoreLogic is a leading real estate firm data company. They've reported that the national home prices have bottomed out after 7 months of decline. Their home price index detected a 0.8% increase in home prices in February, which is a significant turnaround from the downward trend observed the second half of 2022. Chief economist for CoreLogic, Selma Hepp, states that the U.S. home prices rose by 0.8% in February, double the month-over-month increase historically seen, and indicating that home prices in most markets have already bottomed out. Hepp attributes the factors to improved buyer confidence, tight supply, slight declines in home prices, and mortgage rates. CoreLogic forecasts that U.S. home prices will rise by 3.7% between February 2023 and 2024, which is just below the 4.6% annual return on home prices since 1987. However, not all markets will be immune to fluctuations. Cities like Austin and Boise may face corrections in the second half of the 2023 due to elevated mortgage rates and rising inventory after the busy spring season. And we've mentioned this in the past, but a correction is usually about a 10% adjustment in prices. Hepp explains that the regional variations in home prices, quote, declines in the West are due to the tech industry slowdown and severe lack of affordability after decades of undersupply. The consistent gains in the Southeast and South reflect strong job markets in migration patterns and relative affordability due to home new construction. Despite CoreLogic's optimistic outlook, the firms like Fannie Mae and Moody's Analytics predict a 4.2% decline in U.S. home prices between Q4 2022 and Q4 2023, citing factors such as spiked mortgage rates and pandemic housing boom impact on affordability. So that's a what is it, a 7% swing from what Fannie Mae and Moody's Analytics is predicting versus what CoreLogic is predicting. And we had two of these stories back to back a couple of weeks ago, where one of them, I think CoreLogic was saying home prices are increasing. The other one was saying home prices are decreasing. And basically,
literally back, it was the same data. Remember, they took the same
exact data and interpreted it differently.
Everything is actually stabilizing. And then the next article is like, nah, that article's wrong. We're going to use the same data and interpret it our way.
Christina M. Smallhorn is joining us from Facebook, and she says, wait, but it's supposed to be crashing according to the housing crash bros.
Oh, okay, Christina, I sense your sarcasm, and I'm going to address it right now. I'm going to address this right now, because this kind of drippy sarcasm isn't needed on our show. Christina, these guys need a way to make money for their families. It's not about what's right or wrong in the market or what's actually happening or finger on the pulse, because remember, they're not actually real estate agents or financial gurus, but they need to make money for their families. And the only way to do that is to keep everyone afraid. So Christina, I hear you, but no, stop. Okay. Let them do their crash bros, bubble boys crap. Just let them do their thing.
I mean, there's so many other things to cause tremendous fear about that. Housing just may not be one of them. In all the recent recessions, but two, home prices have still increased in value. So, there may be other things. I don't know, like maybe they could talk about a crypto crash or something that would scare more people, but I guess everyone needs housing. So maybe that's why they focus on it so much.
Well, and also, I just hit a button and something happened.
I can still see and hear you. You're fine on my end.
I was scared. I left. I hit something and it went full screen on my page. I'm a boomer. Remember, I'm old, so I don't know what I'm doing here. But now, to make a serious point about Christina's sarcasm, there are some crazy fluctuations and you mentioned a couple of the markets, right? In Reno does it a lot, Austin, and then what was the other one you mentioned? Somewhere in Idaho, Boise,
yeah.
Now, when you look at national numbers, you can read one thing, but then when you look to individuals, you see that there are crazy price drops. But go back 10 years and you'll see that that's kind of normal. These aren't crashes. These are just wild swings. Like where I live, the ebb and flow is much greater than where Ray is. Historically, even with the last 2-3 years, it's still pretty flat because of the market he's in. So there is something to it. But then to her point, you go to these bubble boys and these crash bros, and they go, for instance, on a national scale, everything is fine. But when you look at Austin lost inventory, their inventory spiked by 200%. That means a crash is coming. No, it doesn't.
Yeah. Well, speaking of coming to an end, Dan, you have a similar article saying, I guess almost the same thing, but it had some different points in it. So I did want to include it in the show, but what's your Yahoo Finance saying?
My Yahoo Finance is saying housing market data suggests sector's downturn coming to an end. So again, this is from Yahoo in solidarity with Ray. Yahoo Finance. Housing market data in recent weeks has offered stabilization as the spring selling season begins to ramp up. Mortgage rates are on the downswing, with the average 30-year fixed mortgage dipping to 6.28% from 6.32%. And I think they're at 6.4 now. I think they're back up a little bit. This marked the fourth straight weekly drop as the bank crisis that began 4 weeks ago has pressured treasury rates. So that bank failure, or the 3 or 4 that failed, it seemed to have an effect, although it's not affecting the housing market. But the fear that puts in people has seemed, because remember, we did just get an increase in rates in the base rate 0.25, but interest rates still went down. So that has helped a little bit, even though it came at the failure of some banks. So now mortgage applications did fall 4.1% during the week ending March 31st. But before this drop, mortgage applications had risen for 4 straight weeks. Now, we always have people make the comment, applications are one thing, but can they actually afford a home? Adam is asking if California fell off the continent yet, and no, it hasn't.
It's but still there.
I'll let you know when it does, because we are on the San Andreas Fault. I'll let you know when it does. And I'm not going to ask you for help, because obviously you have no feelings for anyone in California. So thanks, buddy. He loves to make the point, and it's a great point, that just means applications are one thing, but can they actually afford a home? So just keep that in mind. This is a quote from Lawrence Yoon. While access to commercial mortgage loans could become increasingly difficult, residential mortgage loans are expected to be more readily available. So now, if you want to go to this, it's on CNBC, and this breaks it down, Ray. So pending home sales, I'm just going to run through these real quick. Pending home sales, these are signed contracts to buy existing homes in the U.S., rose in February, and that's according to data from about 2 weeks ago. Home builder sentiment is rising. It rose slightly in March. I'm sure we'll get a report on it, but the National Association of Home Builders Wells Fargo Index of Builder Sentiment increased 2 points to 44. And that's from something about a month ago. So that's on the rise. Housing starts rose 9.8% in February to an annualized rate of 1.45 million homes. That's the strongest pace of starts since last September. And that's from the Commerce Department from March 16th. Existing home sales in February jumped 14.5% to an annualized rate of 4.58 million. That is the largest monthly percentage increase since July of 2020, which we all know it was happening then. And that's data from NAR. That increase also marked the end of a 12-month slide. And then finally, the Case-Shiller home prices. So this is kind of what Ray and I have been talking about. You're going to see prices declining, but it's going to be pretty steady and pretty minimal. The S&P CoreLogic Case-Shiller U.S. National Home Price Index fell 0.5% in January compared with the previous month, which is exactly what Ray and I have said. On a yearly basis, the index climbed 3.8% in January, down from 5.6 the previous month. So that last statement there, Ray, or that letter, Ray, I really believe signifies a more normalizing of it. But again, we got to say it, Ray, it's got to come with more inventory. There has to be more inventory. With the housing starts, that's a great number too as well.
Christina Smallhorn now on YouTube says, see, applications are down. It's crashing, just like the Crash Bros said.
Yeah.
Well, that was for the week ending March 31st. We have some updated application data later in the show for this week. But I think
5.1%. Did you see that from Adam? I had a client lock in USDA loan, no points at 5.1.
Oh, that's really good.
That's rad. I mean, it's crazy to say that,
given this market.
2 years ago you were at 3%, but 5% is pretty damn good.
I think Oracle Gary Keller said that we would never see 3%. Did he say under 4 or I think he said under 4% rates again in our lifetime. What he's talking about, his lifetime though?
Right. He's like 80.
I'm hoping he was talking about his lifetime and not my lifetime. Hopefully I've got a little more. Okay. Speaking of big deals and big problems, and I guess loans, negative profits is a big deal. It's especially a big deal if the one facing the negative profit is a bank. Banks face unprecedented losses on mortgages amid high rates and limited housing supply. So the Mortgage Bankers Association recently reported that for the first time ever, banks lost money on mortgages they financed in 2022. On average, independent mortgage banks and mortgage subsidiaries of chartered banks experienced a loss of $301 for each mortgage financed, marking a significant 113% decrease from the previous year's average income of $2,339 per mortgage. This is the first instance of negative profits since the NBA started recording profits in, I'll give everybody time to guess what year? 2008. The decline in housing activity is the primary cause of this loss, according to Marina Walsh, MBA's Vice President of Industry Analysis. Prospective buyers are staying away from the market as mortgage rates reach their 20-year high and limited housing supply keeps home prices elevated. In 2022, banks and other mortgage companies financed an average of $2.6 billion in loans, which is roughly half of the $5 billion figure for 2021. Additionally, the cost of financing home has risen, and the reduction in workers is not sufficient to offset the decrease in business. We've been talking about banks for months now, getting rid of staff, laying people off, and apparently that's still not enough to make up for the rise in cost of the average loan origination. In 2022, banks and mortgage companies spent an average of $10,624 to finance each home loan, representing a 23% cost increase from the previous year. Walsh explains that the rapid rise in mortgage rates over the relatively short period of time, combined with extremely low housing inventory and affordability challenges, meant that both the purchase and refinance volume plummeted. This has led to the disappearance of strong profits observed in the previous 2 years due to declining volume, lower revenues, and higher cost per loan. Experts have different predictions for the U.S. housing market. Some see that home prices potentially falling 9% this year, as stated by the NBA board member. In contrast, others anticipate a milder correction, with the National Association of Realtors economists predicting that they've already bottomed out, which we just talked about. So banks losing money on loans in 2022. I especially wanted to cover this so you guys can expect or can know what to expect to hear from the YouTube Crash Bros in the coming weeks and months.
Right. They're going to be tell you what their videos are going to be about and what the titles are. You can literally predict the titles if you
want. Banks losing money, 3 or 2 banks collapse, and all the entire industry lost money on every loan in 2022. Is this the end? If people can't get loans, then suddenly they're not going to be able to buy homes. So, I mean, the truth of the situation is pretty simple. It's production per employee, staff member, and then the cost of acquiring those loans. Whenever the market heated up for refis in 2000 and 2021, banks hired a tremendous amount of staff to take care of the applications for refinancing.
Right.
And there were so many people that wanted to refinance during that time period. There were some lenders who I had to kind of pull my business away from because they were so busy with refis that they wouldn't take my new home buyer.
Yeah.
And so because of that, these banks had a huge...
Refis are easy business, right? You just refi it, give them the new value, and
as long as you have enough people to process the paperwork.
Yeah.
So because of that, these banks had these huge inflated payrolls to handle the additional volume. And most of the banks didn't make the transition to the market we're in now fast enough, which means in 2022, when halfway through the year, a lot of the bigger major markets stalled and quote unquote started to bottom out, which according to articles today, we've bottomed out. It's not happening anymore. When that happened, though, those banks were behind on the reduction of expenses per loan. So this is a pretty simple scenario in which they didn't adjust quick enough for the decrease in volume. And now, having adjusted, supposedly, a lot of them are running more lean and are going to have better numbers in 2023.
But at this point, I mean, these numbers, these losses that we're covering and the amount of firings they're having, because they're not just firing or laying off, I guess we should say. They're not just laying off mortgage brokers and mortgage actual bankers, they're laying off like essential workforce people. So
right.
are they going to just kind of streamline it and then bring them back slowly or whatever? That I don't know if that's going to hurt them in the long run, but these losses that we're talking about, I mean, they're in the billions of dollars. I don't know how they come from that or come back from that. But Ray, before we move on to the next,
okay, go ahead.
Before we move on to the next time bomb that we're about to predict, I want to hit a couple updates from Clubhouse because we're getting some good comments. So Bobby Carroll, I think he says triangle area of NC, Northern California, NC. No, just kidding. Inventory.
See, everything with a Californian goes right back to California.
It's all about me. Inventory in the triangle area of NC, not Northern California, is getting leaner versus the seasonal growth we normally expect. Michael LeCount, he's in Phoenix. He says they dropped 11% last summer, stabilized by September, October through December, and has been slowly rising since. He believes it's largely the overbidding from which is what we talked about. Dave Chris says a mortgage broker he knows in LA, California, that's where I live. See, it's about me. Is very busy working on 12 new purchases, average about $2 million, which is kind of an averagey price for a lot of areas in LA. Shane LTM, affordable inventory is the problem in a lot of MSAs. Seattle, Denver has always had this problem, but MSAs like Portland and Salt Lake City have always climbed into this category. Bobby Carroll, in our Johnston County, NC again, so North Carolina market, 70+% of our inventory is new construction, which that figure is staggering to me.
Yeah,
is new construction, as homeowners are on strike, by the way. Our county is the fastest growing county in NC and the 9th fastest county in the US. That's a great insight right there.
Very interesting.
Yes, Bobby, I know, North Carolina.
Then he shouts in the comments, North Carolina.
So,
I mean, come on and raise up.
Raise up. So just a quick update there, and I'm going to keep coming back to those because keep those comments coming. But Ray, where is the next time bomb coming from?
Well, I mean, we've been talking about banking. We've been talking about the billions and billions of losses.
No.
No. Maybe we should ask somebody from The Big Short.
By the way, I feel like every time we mention The Big Short, it's a different guy. I thought it was Michael Curry or whoever the main guy is who wrote the book, but it's always some other guy that was part of it. Now, this is a guy who advised some guys to help them short things when they wanted to short things. This is a guy, but he's part
of Michael Burry. Rose to fame when he predicted the collapse of the U.S. housing bubble before the 2008 financial crisis.
Always talking about these, 2008 crash predictor, Dan Ellen. What? Who are these people? How were they all part of this? But anyway, they made millions, so you can't.
Well, in 2000, to be fair, in 2022, he said the mother of all crashes is coming. All right, so what's he saying? What's he saying this time, Dan?
So now he's predicting that there's a hidden time bomb. So Big Short investor sees financial disaster brewing in housing markets. Now, this is from CNBC. So I'm going to rip through this, and there's a lot of points on this one. It's kind of a longer article, and he's got a lot of points back and forth. There's a lot of quotes. If you want to see it, go to CNBC. It's titled A Hidden Time Bomb, blah, blah, blah. So he says, or it starts off, more than a decade after the U.S. mortgage meltdown threatened to destroy the international financial system, a quote-unquote Big Short investor once again sees financial disaster brewing in the real estate market. That sounds okay. Let's listen to this guy. Dave Burt, CEO of investment research firm Delta Terra Capital, was one of the few skeptics who recognized the housing market was on the brink of collapse in 2007. He helped two of the protagonists of Michael Lewis's best-selling book, The Big Short, bet against the mortgage market in the lead up to the 2008 global financial crisis. As it turned out, they were right and were estimated to have made millions. Now, Burt believes an overlooked climate risk could see history repeating itself. What is that climate risk, and does it affect smaller markets or the entire U.S. as a whole? That's the first thing I thought. So there's a quote from him. He says, I'm always on the lookout for these big systemic issues, and there's a few reasons for that. He told CNBC via video conference. He goes on to say, professionally, if something is mispriced, then as an investor, your main opportunity to add value is to identify something that is either too cheap to purchase for your clients or something that is too expensive to sell for your client. Burt said Delta Terrace capital research suggests that 20% of U.S. homes have, quote unquote, meaningful exposure to a mispricing issue because of, Ray, give me some dramatic music right here. Ready?
Okay, hang on. Like, I have, this is like sad music or really, let's go. I'm going to go kind of like scary dramatic.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. Oh wait, no, this may just be the
And line. I'm not trying to downplay this.
Here, we'll do, well, I have sad violin.
Okay. Sometimes they ask you if you're feeling good and you just, yeah, anyway. Burt said that Delta Terrace capital research suggests that 20% of U.S. homes have meaningful exposure to a mispricing issue because of flood risk. So flood risk, not 50 years of data from floods and predictors in the future from flood risk.
Hang on, can you say, do the from flood risk hit one more time for me? What was it from? Big dramatic entry?
This is a mispricing issue because of a flood risk. There you go. So now I don't want to say he's reaching here or if he's right or wrong here, but if realized, he says he warned the fallout could resemble the extraordinary correction seen during the global financial crisis. So he's likening this to a global financial crisis. And unfortunately, areas of Houston and Florida and all up and down the cheese toast, that's the East Coast for you guys that don't watch the show a lot, they have experienced this and they know what it's like to have to go through this, right? And they have homeowners insurance to cover this. Melissa can probably speak to this much better. And if you're listening on Clubhouse in North Carolina, you can speak to this much better. So he says, we think this repricing issue as maybe a quarter of the size of the magnitude of the global financial crisis in aggregate, but of course, very, very damaging within those exposed communities, obviously. So he hones in a little bit. His comments come at a time when the housing market is currently experiencing a major fundamental shift because of higher mortgage rates and as global central banks keep up the fight against inflation by hiking interest rates. In turn, Burt says some cracks are starting to appear in the terms of the cost of insurance. So again, in these areas where flooding is a risk, speak to that. I want to hear about that. He noted that recovering in Florida from Hurricane Ian was an issue he's watching closely, particularly because this storm surge exposed a flood insurance nightmare for homeowners. And then he goes on to say, will they become chasms this year? I'm not sure. But an observation of the highest frequency fundamental data on home sales and home inventories indicates that things are definitely going south for those exposed properties. So is there something there, Ray, or is he just numbers to sound smart?
So you remember, was it a year ago in which the flood data was added to
everyone?
It was added. Well, one flood data was changed. Okay. So used to the way they would predict floods is they would say, this is a 500-year floodplain. In other words, it hasn't flooded here in 500 years. Right. So in order to flood here, it would be a 1 in 500 year type of flood. And recently, those figures have been recalculated based on future potential flood, based on global warming / climate change. And that data was added to, I think it was realtor.com and maybe Zillow, some other third-party websites. Yeah. And we predicted on this show that data would become a catalyst for folks to predict future crashes in certain segments of the market that had a
higher
high rate of future potential flooding, not based on historic flooding, but based on what they thought would happen with global warming, climate change, all that stuff. And that you'd have speculative investors trying to hit up those areas, which I feel like that's exactly what we're seeing now.
Well, it seems like,
and maybe that's, said it on the show is that what his data is based on?
He doesn't really say what, he's just watching it closely. He's just watching it closely. And you know what?
This may be another person in search of clicks, because now he knows that you could go and look at the quote unquote flood data based on climate change predictors.
Yeah.
That, I mean, come on.
It might be, but also it's like the scientists, and I'm not equating this guy to a scientist, but it's like the scientists that literally just sit around all day in Alaska and watch for meteors that might hit the Earth, right? So it's good that he's watching out for this stuff. Now, is he trying to be noteworthy? Is he trying to be a little gotcha to get some headlines? Maybe. But a year ago, we covered this, and pretty much the only outcome we could draw out of it was, well, they're going to, insurance companies are going to use this to gouge people.
That's what we were afraid of. Yeah.
Right. So maybe that's where he's leaning on this. Like, if flood insurance becomes too much, then the affordability of the house goes down. I don't know exactly what he's trying to say here, but Melissa, if you want, she loves flood insurance. It's her favorite topic to talk about. So reach out to her on Facebook and she'll talk to you about it.
Yeah. They also get taxed for rain where she is.
JK, too, she hates it. Well, we took all the rain, so her taxes are fine this year.
Yeah. Well, okay. So some are going to predict that the next looming crisis is coming from natural disasters, thereby through climate change.
Right. Like
others are going to say it's incredible problems in the commercial housing sector. And by others, I guess I might just mean me. Okay, so this story, where's this one coming from? This one had a funny original headline. So we rewrote the headline to say the looming commercial real estate crisis is a hyper reality. The headline on CNBC for this one is the coming commercial real estate crash that may never happen. Okay, so the possibility of a commercial real estate crash is explored, examined through potential risk and outcomes for the real estate industry and the broader economy. And despite the record high office vacancy rates and significant number of mortgages on office buildings due for the refinance in 2023, some experts argue that the situation may be more typical of a down cycle rather than a full-blown crash. Vacancy rates in other commercial real estate sectors, such as warehouse, industrial, retail, and hospitality, are in good shape, which could help counterbalance the challenges in the office sector. Moreover, the 3/4 of commercial real estate debt that has been generated through income in the past to pass recent bank refinance standards, indicating that most debt is due in the next couple of years, could be refinanced without major issues. Federal Reserve officials also expressed that the confidence and resilience of the banking system, noting that banks' exposure to commercial real estate sector is well managed. While the commercial real estate market's challenges could be wide-ranging, economic impacts are the reasons to believe that lending issues in the sector will be contained, especially if other real estate sectors remain strong. So the potential risk lie in the refinancing of loans at higher interest rates, which could result in payments, even vacancy rates rising or remaining high. The declining value of bonds backed by commercial mortgages also is a cause for concern. However, without a deep recession, it's unclear how banks and insurance companies' diversified loan portfolios could face serious trouble. All right, so the main way real estate could create problems for the economy is through an extended decline in the value of commercial mortgages, potentially creating a reduction in lending to all customers, in extreme cases threatening the banks themselves. However, if developers continue to pay on their loans on time and manage refinancing risk, the situation may be more manageable than initially feared. So this does cover a lot that we've talked about in the banking sector and the commercial paper, where I think 2 weeks ago, it was talking about the tightening of loan constraints in the commercial sector and how that could be a major issue, especially if these guys had to refinance. But this article comes in and says if they're continuing to pay on their loan and they're able to refinance when they need to in the next couple of years, that this all should be a gigantic non-issue. But there is some concern in what everyone is looking at. How do you feel about this, Dan?
I have no feelings on this. Absolutely none.
Okay, good. Well, Matt LaMarche is here. Say hi, Matt. Hey, bearded boys, he says. What's up, Matt? Thanks for joining the show.
I like Ray. You're like, okay, good.
I mean, I really don't have much to add to it. It's just a gotcha headline that even in the headline says it may not happen. So I think people don't really know what to anticipate from that sector. It's just a big wait and see to see if everything else can make up for the losses in the office space. And then what are people going to do with the office space? Are they going to turn them into condos and additional living because people need places to live?
Right. Because, but then what is the cost to do that? We've talked about that on the show too. It's like, hey, this would be a great idea, but it's going to cost you $100 million and your ROI is not that high.
What was I can't remember where we were talking about this. I can't remember if I was talking about it in real life or on Clubhouse or on the show.
It merges together.
Yeah. Everything is together, but it was talking about there was a gigantic property that would have made a really, really cool, really cool residential property. But the reason why it wouldn't is because the space was too big. So they can't have.
Yeah, it was the show.
Was that the show?
I think it was an old mall or was it an old school? One of the two.
Yeah. And so now the old school did convert to a successful residential area. But I think it was like a big mall or something. They were saying how you have to, because of the way you'd have to form the rooms and the spaces, you wouldn't have bedrooms because the bedrooms wouldn't have windows to the exterior. Yeah, that was on the show. And then I was like, well, just do a fake window that has an image of what is outside, but it's artificial because we're all into
all the regulations and
So I think that is a big problem, is that you have some of these office spaces that would be ideal to be converted into a residential, especially if it's downtown in a really cool area. I think that's great use. You know, when everyone sent people home for the COVID and they haven't invited them back to work yet, but they're still paying several $100,000 a year for an office space they're not using. That's a big issue. So how do you fix that issue?
Hey guys.
Yeah. Hey, Jack. What's up, Jack? How's it going, man?
I was the one that brought that up last week.
Okay, cool.
And you know, the last two articles about climate and about commercial, I think are the two data points that have the most accurate research behind them versus all of the other doom and gloom crises that we were talking about before that. I mean, I just looked up bank stocks and they're doing okay. They're not firing any guys in the top level, and 24 out of 30 of them are up over the day, some as much as 3 or 4%. But there is, I mean, 60 feet of snow and fires and floods and tornadoes. And in certain parts of the country that are happening more frequently, it's hard to say that that's not a trend and could impact real estate.
Right.
No, I mean, neither one of my daughters, has the concept of going to work on a regular basis because they're all working remotely. And I've got a buddy in the commercial business that I think I mentioned it again last week. I mean, he thinks that at some point they're going to tear buildings down and that all of these commercial buildings are just way over leveraged enough to the point where the developers can just leave the keys on the counter and walk out the door. So, I mean, those are those two articles just popped out more to me than the original ones. And the original ones are, and it's what I like best about this show is the headlines hitting the tradespeople, and we get to pick them apart. But being a little bit removed from the last two, I think they could be more of a trend than the former ones. So, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the feedback. And Shawnee, did you want to say something? I saw that you turned your mic on and off there.
Yeah, it's so funny. I just was speaking to Jeff Brand. You might know him from the app. He's a commercial broker in New York City. I spoke to him last night. We were just chatting about it. He was exclusively doing office leases, and now he's not. He's a multifamily. He's in all types of commercial, and it really varies neighborhood by neighborhood. But I agree with the last speaker. The landscape has changed. The world has changed, and we're not going back. Yes, it's going to ease off. Yes, we have hybrid models now, not completely remote. Yes, with restaurants and service industries, it's changed, but we'll never go back completely. So there is going to be a shift. I think it's 100%. I mean, it's already happened. It's not going to be a total shutdown, but there's the cost savings that businesses have realized over renting space. We're going to see a lot of things change, and there are going to be conversions. I think, like even before COVID, the mall in my area really close to me was already been approved to be converted to work, live, play. And we're going to see the same thing. I think a lot of it will be maybe assisted living. I can see that with certain office buildings and condos, because we have our aging people live longer and we're aging, aging populations, and especially in other states. But definitely, it's not going to go back. People think it's 100% back to where it was. That's not. It was changing before COVID. So think about that. I'm glad that you brought up those two articles.
That's an interesting concept to think of it in the assisted living, because in the areas kind of where dead malls are in my area, they're not totally dead, but they're not doing great. They're also close to hospitals because they're downtown and in cities, and that's really valuable for that type of. That's really nice, good points, Shani and Jack.
Can I make a quick point? We always throw these stories in here. Sometimes we think it's a big nothing burger, and other times we're like, oh my gosh, this is going to get lots of clicks. This is going to get lots of discussion. This is going to get lots of comments. And then we cover these big articles or what we think, and we get nothing on it. And then we cover a guy that's analyzing a thing that doesn't exist, or maybe it does exist, but he may be just trying to get clicks. And then we cover commercial real estate, and we get a bunch of comments. And it's interesting to me. It's just
you never know. It's like whenever you produce a piece of content and you put it on Instagram, you're like, man, I worked so long on this. I know that this is going to be incredible, and you put it out there, and it's terrible.
Great.
And then the thing that you film in your car on the way to an appointment gets like 1 million views. Like, what the dumbest one that about?
I filmed rain today. Rain, because South Florida is just a rain tsunami. I couldn't leave the restaurant, so I filmed. Literally, I'm like, I'm just gonna film rain and put.
How'd it do?
Like,
ASMR.
Like, I don't know yet.
I'm telling you, that's a big market out there.
But
that's a big market. You slow it down, right? Go a little bit slow-mo so you can see the water drops. You put some cool reflective music there, and you're gonna it's gonna go bonkers, and you're gonna
let the sound of that rain come through. People want to hear it.
Or you could do some sound design and add a little bit of rain, but that's definitely gonna be a
no, I could do that. So slow it down, and then of course my husband called, and then what?
You slow it down, and then put some cool piano music behind it.
Yeah.
And then increase like a little bit of rolling thunder, add some sound design, and that thing will go bonkers.
That's what I'm thinking. Right. I said, but this is not so Boca weather today. So
no.
It's horrendously bad down here.
Yeah, what's up, Shane?
You guys could have done an awesome like Bruce Willis skyscraper thing on commercial real estate today for your thumbnail.
We could have.
Those don't work, though. They don't work.
Yeah. We don't get a lot of clicks on those, but that would have been hilarious.
That's a good idea. I like that.
All right, what were you saying, Shane?
I think that most people don't realize that it's actually commercial real estate's a bigger problem. One is if they stop performing, and two, it's very cost prohibitive to be able to do, a multi-residential conversion in the bigger assets. So there's two issues that I'm worried about. Number one is that lead them to a place where they can't perform or don't want to perform? And number two, what about all the surrounding Main Street? So many of the new developments and communities, were integrated is these lifestyle investments where you have shopping, office, and living. So, do people stop paying that premium price, or do they stop wanting to be there when all those assets turn dark? Because if they go from being just vacant to dark, that's going to be a total different impact and effect on the market on the Main Street side. And in the places where the markets are like slower growth, and they don't have strong growth, then it's harder to get that price per square foot conversion anyway to anything meaningful. So I think that'll be the thing that'll be to see if those become kind of these big or partial black holes inside of our communities across the country. And that's my biggest concern with the commercial real estate. And I think the valid part of you guys bringing that up is that it could stir into a much bigger issue for Main Street real estate.
There you go. You don't have to take our word for it.
Shane, can I ask just a quick question? So let's imagine that scenario where, the live and work, like I live upstairs, I work downstairs, or I live, upstairs, and then I walk a couple blocks to work or whatever. What if that becomes too expensive, or my job changes or whatever, or to add to that scenario, people don't go back to that office that's in that area where I live, and now it essentially turns into a ghost town, or people flee like they're fleeing California. What if they leave and they go to more affordable, they go to more suburban, they go to more, I want a little bit of a yard, I want to start a family? What happens if does it become a ghost town? Do they just drop prices until they can sell it? Do they just I forget who mentioned it, but just set the keys and say, take it? What happens?
A lot of that depends on how developed that project is. I mean, we had stuff, look at Denver had a 10-year track coming out of the global financial crisis. It was one of the strongest real estate markets in the nation, but we still had assets that hadn't been attended to for 3, 4, 5 years that eventually they just had to tear down, literally back down to ground. So, when something sits there long enough and it doesn't get used, it does have to go back to ground zero. And that's the biggest thing, is if those phases are done or not done. If they're not done, if they're done, then you can move them, right? But if the whole phase isn't done and you have infrastructure just sitting there, everybody knows something somewhere in town where the infrastructure didn't get finished for whatever the financing reason was. Imagine that at scale in your backyard, wherever that is. That becomes a big issue and a big eyesore and a bunch of black eyes.
Good point.
That's interesting. Thank you. And by the way,
I'm sorry. I think the biggest issue is the fact that the next bigger issue is the fact that these commercial buildings, these big buildings, are so over leveraged, and I think leveraged by the banks, and I think that goes back to the original article.
Yeah.
That's where the linchpin could be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
If they can refi, if they can get out of the situation, then we're good. But if they can't, it's going to be painful. Shawnee, do you want to add one more thing? Shawnee, go ahead.
I was going to say the worst thing about letting them sit is they just deteriorate, and eventually they come down, but they bring other things down around them, and they kill people, and they catch on fire, and they become, drug houses and homeless, the homeless takeover, whatever it is. They become so blighted and so disrepaired that you can't do anything with them.
Yeah,
so
that's
why
I got to
for
turn
the bank is, do you save it now by rezoning it or whatever? Do you try and save the building, or do you let it go and just wait and see what happens? And I'm not sure that that's the best choice.
Yeah.
But I'm reading an article right now talking about a mall that's near us, and it says that using the word mall is the kiss of death right now because they're going away so quickly. And
so multi-use facility.
Yeah.
Well, and this one's not doing that, but I do know of some others that did do that, and that's exactly what they did. Was they put senior housing in, or they put urgent cares in them, or something like that.
Medical.
I just wanted to mention too, and it's so funny how people forget this was the biggest. Remember, this was a huge issue before COVID. Malls have been dying for the last 15, 20 years or more. So it's something that's just been accelerated by COVID. It's not something that's new due to COVID. And the other, I think people forget about that. It gets lost sometimes. And the other thing I want to say is, with all the housing inventory, people tend to forget, or they don't count enough, in my opinion, population growth and immigration, legal immigration. Where I live, we have a highly skilled legal immigration and, people buying houses. So I'm just saying, people, I think those numbers, I don't have them in front of me, but I think, like with the IT tech centers, areas like that, especially as remote work, I think people forget, we don't think about that enough or account for that when we're talking about housing, and inventory, and, we'll go back to this, or we're going to have recession. Those things are all probably true. They all happen and come at certain times, but I think people need to look at population growth. I think it's not, people forget about that part of the equation, at least in my opinion, sometimes.
Population growth and exactly where it's happening around the country too. And one of the interesting things they can look at is kind of a barometer of what's happening. And we talked about this just in an article recently. Let's see, I guess 2 or 3 articles ago, we said that the mortgage applications to finance a property were down in March, but that's not the whole story because we have new data.
And Bobby has a good point about tax revenue. A lot of these malls are reassessed. There's one in my area that's been reassessed. And a lot of these municipalities, he wrote it in the chat, it's a problem with the, governments, county, state, whatever the level is, losing revenues because of these closings of office buildings and malls. That's a huge thing. And I know
taxes are always an 2019.
Issue. Yep.
Taxes are always an issue. All right. Sorry, we gotta move. We got a couple more articles to cover here, so I'm gonna move us on. Go ahead, Daniel.
have to switch between all these different windows because
I know
that graphic and the sound effect ends differently, and I have to watch when it ends and see my face come back, just so you know what I'm thinking, because why not tell you everything? Anyway, homebuyer mortgage demand jumps after interest rates drop to a 2-month low, and this is from CNBC. If you guys can get that reference, by the way, when I say CNBC and I see CNBC, if you guys know that reference, I'll give you a high five. Go ahead. You will never, ever, ever know why I say CNBC that way. Anyway, maybe someone will figure out. Anyway,
Howard Stern.
Boom. There you go.
Wow. See?
Yep.
Love our listeners.
From Private Parts, his movie. Yeah, they were trying to get him to say WNBC the right way. WNBC. WNBC. So whenever I see NBC, I think the same thing. Anyway, nice pull. Today's housing market is so pricey that homebuyers are highly sensitive to any distinct moves in mortgage rates. And that's what happened in the last week. Rates dropped and buyers dove in. The average contract interest rates for a 30-year fixed mortgage with conforming loan balances decreased to 6.30% from 6.40. There you go. There's the update. I think I said 6.4 earlier, but it decreased back to 6.3. And that is according to the Mortgage Bankers Association. I got rid of the rest of the stuff. It's a long title, and I don't like to read it every week. That was a weekly average decline, but a sharper one-day drop smack in the middle of the week was likely the impetus for demand. Here's a quote from Mike Pratt and Tony. He's MBA's SVP and chief economist. Incoming data last week showed that the job market is beginning to slow, which led to a 30-year fixed rate decreasing to 6.3%. Mortgage applications to purchase a home rose 8% for the week. Compared with the previous week, they were, however, 31% lower than the same week 1 year ago when interest rates were significantly lower. They always kind of throw that little tidbit. Yes, we know they were a lot lower. Buyers have been up against not only higher rates and higher home prices, but very limited supply. If only there was something that Joe Biden could do to help incentivize sellers. God, that drives me nuts. But next week, I can guarantee you we're going to talk about a new program that's going to help home buyers. Applications to refinance a home loan were less reactive, basically flat week to week and 57% lower than the same week a year ago. At today's interest rates, there are very few borrowers who can benefit from a refinance. For those looking to tap their home equity, they are largely opting for second loans rather than cash out refinances, which is kind of smart. Mortgage rates moved higher to start this week, and this is really, really funny to me. I just read that whole article and everything about it, and then it ends with mortgage rates moved higher to start this week, and they could move decidedly in either direction after the government's monthly report on inflation is released. They could move decidedly, Ray, in either direction. Interesting, right?
There you go. Decidedly in either direction is kind of yeah, or could not move. I mean, I guess that's the other option.
But why even throw that in there? Yeah, we all knew that. It's not. Yeah.
I guess they had to have a disclaimer that, hey, they knew an inflation report was coming, and we have that for you now. So inflation decelerates as the Fed hikes show impact. A sign of relief? In March, inflation showed signs of deceleration, rising only 0.1% and 5% year on year as the Federal Reserve's interest rate hikes began to take effect. The Consumer Price Index, or CPI, increased by 0.4%, excluding food and energy, and 5.6% annually, both in line with expectations. Although inflation remains above the Fed's target, the slowdown may provide relief for some policymakers and investors. 3.5% drop in energy costs and unchanged food index contributed to the moderated inflation rate. Shelter costs, which account for about 1/3 of the CPI weighting, rose 0.6%, resulting in an 8.2% annual increase. The Fed is closely monitoring the shelter cost. We know that because he says that it needs to be a correction. So the Fed is closely monitoring shelter costs as it seeks to control inflation. Stock market futures rose and Treasury yields fell after the report. The Fed raised the benchmark rate, interest rate 9 times over the past year, totaling 4.75 percentage points, the fastest pace since the early 1980s. Initially, the central bank dismissed inflation as transitory, but had to play catch up as the price increases proved more durable. The economy slows down. As the economy slows down, experts believe that consumer prices will decelerate further, bringing inflation closer to the Fed's 2% target. The labor market has also shown an easing in recent months, with non-farm payrolls increasing 236,000 in March, the smallest gain since December of 2020, and average hourly earnings growing at 4.2% annual pace, the lowest level since June of 2021. Then it goes on and talks about some used vehicle prices and that contributor and all that stuff. We've been expecting the non-farm payrolls to decelerate. It's one of the things that we talked about. The Fed has two jobs: to avoid inflation and keep everyone employed. That's kind of their goals. And so the way they do that is by raising the rate at which banks trade money with each other. When it's more attractive for a bank to trade money with some other bank versus put it out into the public and give it to a small business to grow, or give it to someone to take a loan out for whatever reason, then you have less money out in the economy. You have less orders being put out. You have less expansion efforts by these businesses, small, medium, or large businesses. And when there's less expansion efforts, there's less hiring. And eventually everything, because there's fewer orders, then I don't need to hire any more people for my factory to run my factory. I don't need to buy that next machine because we're pretty much at, yes, we're at capacity, but we're also at the max orders. Now orders are going back down. And so now we have to lay some people off. And so this is all expected. It's not crazy. It's not an unruly economy. Whenever the Fed raises rates, jobs go down. So this is the goal, although he is focused seemingly more on housing and real estate and trying to make that a correction, a forced correction. The lever he is using to change jobs and inflation seems to be working a little bit. So they've had to play catch up, as it said, but now it seems to be finally working. Any comments on that? I think you have an article that is I'm similar.
Hit it real quick. This one has a great breakdown. So if you want to do the transition, we'll go right into it.
It's also got a really, really good chart.
By the way, I think Jack's comment is relating to our transitions. At some point, we'll get them right, but it's really difficult because there's a delay when Ray triggers it, and it's hard to predict when that delay is. But anyway, Ray, do you want to bring you back up, and then can you bring up this article so people can see the chart for themselves?
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, there you go. So Ray already hit on a lot of good points. So this is just literally from CNBC, and it's an inflation breakdown for March 2023. There's lots of quotes in here, but I'll just hit the last two things that I pulled. So the consumer price index, which Ray already mentioned, a key gauge of inflation, rose by 5% in March relative to 12 months earlier. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics said Wednesday the index measures price changes across a broad basket of consumer goods and services like food, housing, electronics, and recreation. The latest annual reading declined from 6% in February. The reduction doesn't mean prices fell. They're still rising, just more slowly than a year ago. So similar to home price gains cooling. A little bit of inflation is good. Policymakers, I think you already said this, and for 2%. While still painfully high, this is from Mark Zandi, chief economist at Moody Analytics. While still painfully high, inflation has eased significantly from its peak to more than 9% in June 2022. Inflation seems poised to fall back to policymakers' targets by this time next year, barring any unforeseen derailments. He said, inflation is fundamentally moderating, and all trend lines look good. So, if you want to look there, eggs are crazy and
crushing it, man. If you're in the egg business, then you've had a year.
I can tell you why. I have a buddy who his brother and friends still run egg farms, large egg farms, some of the largest in the country. And my friend used to do it as well. There's a reason specifically in California why it went up and across the nation. And it's the dumbest thing ever. It's literally the dumbest thing ever. And it didn't really add costs to farm these eggs and put them out to the consumer. But egg, farmers were like, well, we can add to our prices. It's part of it, but it's also people are paying it. I like that margarine is the second one.
Well, wasn't it the avian flu? Wasn't there a bird flu that went through there?
No.
Do you know how to produce more eggs?
More chickens.
No. Eggplants. Okay, so frozen vegetables are also up 20%. I know that was a bad joke. Airfare is up 17.7%. Motor vehicle repair 17%. White bread 16.5%. So much for wheat. Where's wheat? Wheat bread is not listed. Food from vending machines that's up 16.2%. Motor vehicle insurance 15%. Electricity 10%. Of fresh whole chicken that's up 8.9%. Which we've noticed that we get our chickens and break them down. Did you know that? We break down our chickens instead of buying like a pack of chicken breast. We just buy the chicken.
Yeah.
And then we break it down and cut it off. And then we keep the wings in the freezer for a good Monday Night Football.
By the way, Ray, you know how I usually give you an interesting, I try to find something new about you.
Yeah.
I have actually processed chickens from the whole thing. Yeah. I wanted to know.
As a Californian?
Yeah, on a farm. I processed a lot of chickens.
Are you sure it wasn't like Impossible chicken?
No, these were real chickens. I saw them. Everything. I don't want to get too detailed and too graphic for any vegans out there, but it's a process, and I'm glad I went through it because I wanted to know where my food came from. I wanted to feel like I caught a chicken or something and processed it, and then ate it.
Okay, so drop this in. We have to get to the next article real quick, but I do want to drop this in the comments. Are boneless wings actually just chicken nuggets?
Yeah.
Okay. And then let me get to food is 8.5% increase overall. Food at home is an 8.4% increase overall. The all items less food and energy went up 5.6%. It's a really interesting graph. Some of these things went down. Energy, gasoline went down 18%. Televisions are down 14%. Used cars and trucks are down 11.2%. I have to say though, they were really, really high.
But they were really high. They were doing. Really high. Remember, they were doing what houses were doing.
And it's because they couldn't get the microchips for some of the cars, so there was kind of a shortage in cars in a while because we all know those microchips were used in vaccines.
Well, hold on. That's why my phone sticks to me.
Yeah.
I'm triple vaccinated, so I can predict the future. I can order stuff from Microsoft right now. Like,
oh my goodness. I
just ordered a new computer.
Major appliances are down 7.9%, which is good. Energy overall is down 6%. Computers are down 5.8%, unless you're an Apple user. And then bacon is down 5.5% as well.
I think, did you just make a joke against your own favorite thing?
No, it's not I mean, it's a luxury. It's
pretty good. It's pretty good. I like it. I like it. Good job, Ray.
All right. Let's see. Do I have the next article? Oh, no, I do. What are we talking about? Oh, here's an expansion of a company. Drop it. Don't do it.
No, this one is fine. But then oh, okay. No, I added another one that we should cover, but we're not. It's just it's a merger, blah blah. Who cares? But this one we need to cover.
Are you talking about Compass?
No. Different merger. Two huge companies, Black Knight and ICE merging. That's the one I sent in the.
Oh, yeah. We're keeping it. We should just mention that we're keeping an eye on that one. So Black Knight, ICE are trying to merge. FTC is coming in and saying, wait.
Hold up. It's supposed to happen. It's supposed to April 28th. So we're watching that one. FYI, if you guys want to look into that.
That's my birthday.
Oh, Ray's going to be 49.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us today. Really appreciate the feedback. Awesome discussion on Clubhouse. Thank you guys for joining us there. Everybody that came to the YouTube and commented, we really appreciate that. If you're in the replay crew, do #replaycrew so that we know it's you.
Sorry, I
especially
didn't
on
get all
Facebook
the
too.
Comments. I know we had a bunch of them, so thank you.
Yeah, we love you guys. Dan, tell everybody where they can find you, man.
D-Lettergrocks, DLUDWIGROCKS everywhere. Ray, can you give me a quick update? Because I feel selfishly that I've been busy and I haven't asked you, how are you doing? How are you dealing with everything? And then can people still donate?
Yes. Find me at Razorback, RAYZORBACK on Instagram. And that is where you can go and donate. We're giving money to the Arkansas Food Bank because over this next year, due to the amount of people that were displaced, especially the people that were renters in the bottom 1/3 of the market by the tornado, the food bank is going to be feeding a lot of people that they didn't intend to feed this year. So give some money to the food bank. It's an organization that I've worked really closely with in the past. It was a group of farmers that got together and said, hey, we have leftover food. Let's use it to feed people. And then they've grown over the years. The food bank in Arkansas feeds, I think it was 17% of the Arkansas population before they joined forces with the Feeding America Food Bank. So
wow,
really, really good group. There's a lot of cleanup effort that's finished. And so now we're starting to rebuild and waiting on insurance companies and all that kind of stuff to do their part. But if you want to give, that's a wonderful way to give, and I appreciate that. So thanks everybody for joining the show. DM us, let us know that you're listening. If you're listening to this on the podcast, write a review, do all the subscriber things on the YouTubes,
and comment, do it all.
Yeah, do all that jazz for us. We really appreciate it. All right, we'll see you guys next week. Bye, everybody.
Guys, hey, also, Compass added 300 agents in Arizona. What is going on? Check on your